Everyone, welcome back to the channel where today we've got another Football Manager 2017 experiment for you. Now today we're going to take a look at what would happen if the English leagues, so obviously that is the Premier Division, Championship, League 1, League 2 and the Vanarama National, what would happen if they could only play English players in their team. Now I posted a message up on Twitter, I think it was yesterday, regarding the first season that we simulated with this. And as we can see on the screen in front of us now, that Man City finished rock bottom of the Premier League in that first season. Sunderland were also relegated. I mean, that was pretty obvious, really, considering they get relegated all the time anyway. Middlesbrough were the third team to go down on 31 points. Watford narrowly avoiding the drop on the last day of the season. Liverpool lifting the title, their first Premier League title for many years, with a strong performance, losing just 3 games in that first season with 3 draws, 32 wins. They've absolutely dominated there with just 21 goals scored against. Now what I've done is I've actually simulated another year into the future, which is why we're currently sat on the 1st of June 2018. So I'm not going to be able to bring you too much in that first season in regards to squad stats, etc., because I hadn't planned to make this into a video. But I thought it'd just be a good thing to put up on the channel for you guys to take a look at and just see over a 5 to 10 year period what sort of patterns emerges. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in next and have a look at the transfers that were made in that first season, a couple of other bits and bobs, and then we're going to skip to the second season where we're currently at in this save. So then on the transfer screen in the first season, the English Premier Division, the most money was paid for Jordan Pickford, which was from Sunderland to Liverpool for 15.25 million, potentially rising to 21 million. Michael Keane went from Burnley to Arsenal for 14.5. Ryan Shawcross went from Stoke to Spurs. Connor Wickham from Crystal Palace to Arsenal. Jack Colback from Newcastle to Southampton. Stephen Colker from QPR to Liverpool. Carl Darlow from Newcastle to Man United. Now that's a bit of a surprising move, but obviously Man United are on the lookout for keepers, considering they've only really got Sam Johnston, that is of English descent anyway, in that team. A few other players have gone. Aaron Lennon, another one to Manchester United, which was a bit of a surprise move, I've got to say. But with the likes of Gary Hooper going from Sheffield Wednesday to Liverpool, Charlie Taylor to Liverpool, Kyle Norton to Liverpool, and a few others, it is just a little bit different to what we're used to seeing with the Premier League. And it was really, really interesting to see that Man City finished rock bottom. What we're going to do next is we're going to go and check out the Man City team and see exactly what went wrong. So looking at Man City then, now I've gone back and looked at last season. Obviously they had Angus Gunn in goal, John Stones 47 appearances, Raheem Sterling, who is now at Liverpool, Jack Baldwin for now at Hull, Kadeem Harris played 45 games for them, Josh Cullen 45 games, is now at Watford, Jordan Abita 39 games, is now at Newcastle, Isaac Buckley Ricketts playing 28 games, scoring 4 goals. Phil Foden, 27 games, 2 goals, now playing at Sunderland. And what basically the idea behind this whole thing was just to see if this would have any impact on a wider scale for the England national team. Will these younger players, the likes of Phil Foden, that don't seem to develop within this game because they just don't get the game time, like Jadon Sancho and a few other guys, how will that affect their ability in this game? Will it really improve their stats? I can't show you that at this present moment because obviously we're another year into the future. But what we're going to do now is, obviously we've looked at the Premier League. I'm just going to take a quick look at the Championship first of all, and then we're going to go to 2018 and have a look at what's happened. So then the first season in the Championship saw Newcastle really perform well, 90 points in total from 46 games. Brighton get promoted in second with 84 and Norwich in third with 18. Now that's kind of what I expected, really. What I will say first of all is that Wigan have really performed well there, up in 6th position. Finished on 72 points from 46 games. It's a really, really good return. Brentford, Nottingham Forest and Preston all met with relegation. Preston are notable poor performers in the league with just 30 points from 46 games. That's less than a point per game. Really poor return. Ipswich almost getting relegated along with Blackburn and Birmingham City, although Birmingham City were pretty alright actually on 53 points, so ignore that. But Ipswich were a point from safety from getting relegated even, and Brentford a point from safety. So that was interesting. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a quick look at the transfers in that season. Now, Colback went from Newcastle to Southampton. We know that already because we've covered that. And a lot of these players are going to be from Championship teams out to Premier League teams. Now let's see if we can find some action here from Championship teams. And the first one that I can see that instantly comes to my attention is Mark Beavers moving from Bolton to QPR for 1.9 million. Another good buy there for QPR is Richard Smallwood from Rotherham, moving for 1.3 million, potentially rising to 1.7. Wigan are in there with David Martin from MK Dons for 775k. Liam Mandeville moves from Doncaster to Brentford, in amongst a few others. Jonathan Grimes from Birmingham to Chelsea. That's a bit of a strange move in the general context of this game, but obviously this isn't like what we're used to. It's a completely different experiment here. So now what we're going to do is, now we've looked at this, we're going to pretty much go into what's happened today. So we're the second season in, and it is Manchester United who are top of the Premier League. Liverpool sit second with the Champions League spot, just 2 points behind Manchester United. The same amount of games lost, but Man United just managed to get an extra win in the bag over Liverpool, who got an extra draw. Tottenham sit third. Arsenal again in fourth position. They have finished fourth 2 years in a row, and they always finish fourth. Chelsea have improved from 11th up to 5th. Burnley are up there as well. Bournemouth in around that same position. Southampton finishing 8th. We've got Leicester, Hull, Crystal Palace. Teams that are relegated are Newcastle, Norwich and Watford. Now Watford narrowly avoided the drop last season, just getting 2 points ahead of Middlesbrough, but unfortunately this time round they were really poor with just 22 points and they have gone down. Swansea managed to stay up on goal difference. They finished on the same amount of points as Newcastle, and Brighton managed to avoid the drop by a point. I'd say that's pretty what I'd expect. Let's have a look at the Manchester United team first of all. Let's see who they've got. Jose Mourinho is still manager of Manchester United. Now this is the team. Obviously they've got Asmir Begovic. Now what this thing will do is, although we're looking for English players to be played, they will play players that have English as their other nationality. So for example, Begovic has now played in English football for as long as he has, which means he comes up as a other nationality as English, so he's eligible to play for English teams. Yannick Bolasie is another one which we can see here. He's also at Manchester United. So then let's go through these guys, and we have got the likes of Kieran Tierney, who has moved down from Celtic. We can see here he cost £5 million and has done well since arriving to Old Trafford, and he's now valued at 17.75 million, and he's been pretty much a regular first teamer in this Manchester United side, as you would expect with these restrictions. Craig Dawson is one of their strong centre-backs. He has moved from West Brom to Manchester United for 9.25. He's valued at 15.75 now, and has done well since moving to Old Trafford as well. One that really stands out for me is Danny Drinkwater, who has moved from Leicester City. He's played 35 games since moving to Manchester United. He scored 5 goals, but has created 20 goals with 7 man of the matches. That is going to take some beating, although Luke Shaw with 9 man of the matches and 6 assists from that left-back position also, again, is a fantastic return that. But Danny Drinkwater, a bit of a surprise package really for me. I wouldn't really have associated him with a Manchester United side, although, you know, obviously he played for that title-winning side Leicester. But he's done well since moving over. He's played 26 games in the league, 15 assists, 4 man of the matches and 3 goals after moving for £30 million this season. I think that's quite pleasing really, I've got to say. They've got Ross Barkley, Oliver Burke. Mikel Antonio has got 18 goals in 42, 4 assists. And again, you know, he's not the kind of guy you'd expect to be at Manchester United. They've got James Wilson up front for them, who's got 5 in 8. Lewis Holtby, who's obviously got that English other nationality for his time. I think his part parentage is English anyway. But he's obviously spent time with Fulham and Tottenham and stuff like that, so that will definitely help. But he has performed quite well for them as well in the Premier League. Ross Barkley, Yannick Bolasie, Marcus Rashford, and a few others as well. A few of the youth players coming through, as we can see here. Angel Gomez, Rashawn Williams. Cameron Borthwick Jackson. Nearly forgot that one, lads. Connor Ripley also in there. So that is Manchester United looked at. Let's have a look at the transfers on the whole. So Demarai Gray is the biggest mover of the window, who moved from Everton to Chelsea for £40.5 million. Aaron Cresswell moved from West Ham to Chelsea for £38 million. Yannick Bolasie from Spurs to Man U for £32.5. Drinkwater we've already looked at, but Raheem Sterling has moved from Man City to Liverpool for £27.5, and that is a very expensive move really for a player who I don't really rate. He's gone back to Liverpool after making that big money move. He's upset a lot of Liverpoolians with that move, but he's now back at Anfield at Liverpool. Jesse Lingard has gone from Man United to Tottenham. That's not beyond the wildest realms of the imagination. Good young English talent. And that's pretty much it really. We've got Will Hughes going from Derby to Spurs, Jordan Ibe from Bournemouth to Arsenal, Troy Deeney from Watford to Arsenal, and various other moves in there. If there's anyone in particular you'd like me to look at, do let me know. We'll have a look now down at the Championship, because obviously Man City were in the Championship this season. So Villa have gone through winning the playoff final. We want to look at the league table though, and the league table tells us that Man City have absolutely dominated the Championship this season, playing 46, winning 30, drawing 13 and losing just 3, with a 33 goals against, a 48 positive goal difference for 103 points. So they've walked away with the league by 22 points here over Wigan, who get promoted. Now, I did say that they did perform really well last season when they finished in 6th, I believe it was. Yes, it was 6th. And they've improved on that here. They've got another 9 points in total, which has been enough to see them through. Aston Villa take the 3rd promotion spot, winning in the playoffs. Birmingham City, unfortunately, are relegated to League One. Bolton and Peterborough are also back down in League One. Barnsley managed to scrape a survival spot along with Sheffield United, and Huddersfield almost went down here with just 53 points. We'll have a look at the transfers while we're here. And again, a lot of these are going to be going from the Championship to the Premier League, but here's one. Cameron Carter-Vickers moved from Ipswich to Man City for £15 million. Man City also picked up Ruben Loftus-Cheek from Chelsea for £10 million, and a fair few others. Tom Bradshaw coming in from Fulham, Kieran Lee from Sheffield Wednesday, and Scott Hogan from Aston Villa. I think what we'll do now is we'll go in and we'll have a look at the Man City squad. We might as well. We've looked at Manchester United already, so it only makes sense to look at the other half of Manchester in this experiment. They've still got Joe Hart in goal, who is currently injured but has played the lion's share of games this season. Kyle Walker-Peters is in the squad as well, coming in from Tottenham. They've got Ala Aina, Tom Clark, John Stones, Cameron Carter-Vickers, who's coming, Jack Hunt in that right back position, who's been a mainstay for them since coming in from Sheffield Wednesday earlier this season. Again, it's not a player you'd expect to be playing for Man City. Joe Bennett, the ex-Aston Villa man, is now a Man City player moving from Cardiff, and he's played quite regularly and done reasonably well since moving in. They've got Ben Osborne, who's played a lot of games this season, who moved in from Nottingham Forest. Decent enough player, but again, not the kind of guy you'd expect to be playing for Man City, given their kind of reputation. Kieran Lee has played a lot of games for them, and he moved in from Sheffield. And then they seem to have raided a lot of players from Sheffield Wednesday. The lion's share of goal scorers, though, were between Andros Townsend, who came in from Crystal Palace, who's got 16 goals, or 17 goals rather, and 13 assists from 50 games. They've also got Scott Hogan, who's got 16 in 32, has helped fire them back into the Premier League. And Scott Hogan doesn't look too bad, actually. 26, did play for Aston Villa last season after moving from Brentford. Now he's with Man City, and he's done a fair job really for them to get them back into the Premier League. Tom Bradshaw with 5 in 6. Miles Story with, let's have a quick look at Tom Bradshaw actually. Again, former Walsall man, moved to Fulham, but has done a good job since coming in at Man City, and the sparing amount of games that he's had for the club. Joshua Onomar and Lyndon Gooch have performed reasonably well, but they've absolutely run away with the Sky Bet Championship this season, as we can see. A dominant performance. Now let's have a quick look down at League One to see what has gone on there. And Nottingham Forest and Brentford are back in the Championship after getting relegated last season. Unfortunately, Preston were unable to get back into it, but they weren't a million miles away from the edge of the promotion spots. And Mansfield are in the Championship for the first time in as long as I can remember, winning the playoffs there. Going down were Notts County, Oldham, Shrewsbury and Scunthorpe. Nottingham Forest managed to win on goal difference just by 2 goals over Brentford to get back into the Championship. And let's have a quick look at that Forest team and see. And Steve Morrison, the ex-Leeds United man, Millwall, Scunthorpe guy, has fired them back in with a really, really good return of 27 goals in 51 games with a 7.24 average rating there for Nottingham Forest. They've done really well. Nicky Maynard with 16 in 47, 4 assists. Again, a decent performance. A good amount of assists coming from their midfield with Kieran Cadogan and Tom Walker helping them back into the Premier League. And Tom Walker's done well there for them. Coming from Bolton, has played a decent amount of games for them since coming in and has really helped fire them back into the Championship. So that was that covered really. We don't need to look too much at the other teams. Let's have a look, see if we've got any surprises down in League 2. Now, relegated from League 2 is Hartlepool and Woking, right down at the bottom. Not really much. Portsmouth are still in League 2, hovering in mid-division in around 12th place. Doncaster sits 7th. Crewe. Chesterfield are promoted to League 1. Bristol Rovers promoted. Crawley promoted. And Wickham are the Championships of League 2. Now, Wickham Wanderers were fired in thanks to goals from Scott Cashket, who got 25 in 51 appearances for them. He was brought in from Leyton Orient and has helped fire them back into the League 1, which used to be the old Division 2. So yeah, that's good news for them. Let's have a quick look at the Vanarama National League before we progress this forward. And Yeovil have returned to the Football League with AFC Fylde getting the other promotion spot. Going down from the National League is Boreham Wood, Altrincham, Chester and Dartford. But yeah, again, not really much of a surprise there. I think the biggest surprise of all was the fact that Manchester City were relegated in that first season. Now they've come straight back up at the first time of asking. We're now in the second season. So what we're going to do now is we are going to go another 3 years into the future. So it's going to be 5 years in total. And we're going to see what happens in English football between now and then. And we're also going to have some international things to take a look at as well. Obviously, the World Cup and the Euros is going to come up. So we're going to take a look at those and just see how well England do, really, given that the English players are getting more game time than they otherwise would on this game. So if we don't know, we've got to find out. So let's go and advance another 3 years into the future. Back then, guys, we're now another 3 years into the future, 5 in total. We're back here on the 1st of June 2021, and Manchester United won the 18-19 Premier League title ahead of Liverpool and Chelsea. Liverpool finished marginally ahead of Chelsea on goal difference, with Man City in 4th. That was a good return to the Premier League for Man City, considering they were relegated in the opening season, won the Championship with 103 points in that second season, and they're straight back into the thick of it here in the Premier League in their 4th place finish here, ahead of Tottenham and Arsenal. Relegated from the Premier League this season was Aston Villa, Crystal Palace and Wigan with 12 points. That is a very, very low total, that, for Wigan. Very disappointing for them, who have performed above expectation, I've got to say, in this experiment. Let's have a look at the next season. The 19-20 season was a win for Manchester United also. I think they won it the year before, didn't they? So Manchester United have retained their title in the 19-20 season, with Arsenal in 2nd, Liverpool in 3rd with Chelsea in 4th. Man City dropped down to 6th this time around, finishing 4th the season before. Relegated from the Premier League were Derby County, Sunderland and Brighton. In amongst the teams in the Premier League, there isn't really any that have really come up from the Championship that have stayed there and made the grade. I'd say Burnley are doing better than expected. They've been right up there throughout compared to how they usually get on in the Premier League. Let's have another look now. We've got the current season which Tottenham have won the Premier League, wrestling it back from Manchester United. A vast improvement from Tottenham this season. Liverpool sit in second with 86 points. Man City up into third with Man United claiming fourth with 75 points, and Arsenal in fifth. Aston Villa, West Ham and West Brom are all relegated down to the Championship. Cardiff, a good performance there on their first season in the Premier League, finishing in 12th position with 42 points. Let's go and have a look at, for starters, we'll have a look at the Tottenham squad because they won the league most recently. They've got Kasper Schmeichel and let's have a look at their kind of tactical formation. So they've got Fraser Forster in goal. They've got Dominic Iorfa at right back, Eric Dier in the middle with Ryan Shawcross and Danny Rose. They've got Jesse Lingard, Will Hughes, Harry Winks, Nathan Redmond, Harry Kane and Saido Berahino up front. They've got Kasper Schmeichel in goal. Ben Woodburn has featured quite strongly for Spurs as well in this game, but it's a really, really brilliant return out from Harry Kane. 43 goals in 52 appearances for the club, 9 assists and 14 man of the matches. He's been an absolute stalwart for them this season. Will Hughes has played a lot of games, again 55 games, 7 goals, 19 assists with 3 man of the matches. Again, another really good. There's a lot of players here that have played a lot of games all the way down. Jesse Lingard has been a good buy for Manchester United. Nathan Redmond has done well with 14 assists in there, and Harry Winks 16 assists and 9 goals from 49 games with 5 assists. Let's have a quick look. We'll go for Eric Dier first of all. Now, there's Eric Dier. Has been a really sound, solid centre-back for Spurs. When he can play either in the defensive mid, centre of midfield, or in that defensive role, he's very versatile in those attacking positions, well, in those defensive positions, and he's been a really good signing for Spurs. Will Hughes came in from Derby County for, let's have a look, £21 million here, and he's played a lot of games each season for Spurs and has been a regular fixture in this side. He's done quite well. He's got into the England squad. He's played 23 times for England, scoring 3 goals. A really good return, actually. He's done really well. He's established himself in the squad. He's got plenty of assists, so he's a very, very creative player. Jesse Lingard in from Manchester United. They must have paid a pretty penny, so £30 million for him. We've already gone over this, really, but he's played around the mid-30 games each season. Some really good 7+ ratings. Harry Kane has been phenomenal for Spurs this season, and he's been scoring regularly each season. His overall profile is 166 goals in 266 appearances. A world-class striker, as is here in his bio, and you can't argue with that, really. Let's have a look at Harry Winks. He's developing really nicely now for Spurs. He's been given some game time, and his stats are really, really improving in the manner which you would expect a regular performer for Spurs. And he's played plenty of games, mid-30s every season. His best season by far was this 2021 season now, and he's beginning to establish himself as one of the brightest talents in English football. And I don't think it'll be long before he gets into that England first team, if he hasn't already got on the cusp of that. Saido Berahino has played really well for them. He's got 5 caps for England, scoring 36 goals in 107 appearances for Spurs. And we'll have a quick look at Ben Woodburn, who's been brought in from Watford. Was initially at Charlton, but has been brought in for 10.25 mil to Watford, and then £30 million to go from Watford to Tottenham. A good bit of business out for Watford, and he scored 12 in 30 this season. Really good return, and he's continuing to develop. Mason Holgate from Everton has played 110 games for Spurs since making the switch. He cost Spurs 22 mil, and he's done really well since making the move. Now let's have a quick look at the England team and see, because obviously we now want to see, because the whole experiment is based around playing English players only in these English teams. So in theory it should help increase the ability of the national side. So when we started this experiment, they were 13th. They dropped all the way down to 21st but they're now back up to 14th, so there hasn't really been any improvement whatsoever, although they did get up to 7th at their highest point, but they've dropped down quite significantly. They're down to as low as 21st. The top players, you've got Dele Alli, Raheem Sterling, Nathaniel Clyne, Harry Kane, Jordan Henderson, Luke Shaw, who's been brilliant for Manchester United. And let's have a quick look at his stats. And in that first season, he had a rating of 8.0. He was the best player in the world, voted best player in the world. And he was superb for Manchester United that season. Okay then, so let's have a look at the English national side. Now in the national side, they have got Jack Butland, Jordan Pickford and Bailey Peacock-Farrell, all goalkeeping options. Now Butland is obviously the main one amongst those. They've got Nathaniel Clyne, Joe Gomez, Michael Keane, John Stones, Callum Chambers, Eric Dier and Trent Alexander-Arnold, and Luke Shaw at the back. They have Reece Oxford, Jordan Henderson, Will Hughes, Jesse Lingard, Raheem Sterling, Saido Berahino, Reece Nelson and Marcus Rashford, Ross Barkley, Dele Alli, Callum Wilson and Harry Kane. Now there's not really any in there that, I mean, perhaps with the exception of Trent Alexander-Arnold, who has really improved for the benefit of experience in this save. He wasn't really getting much action before that, and he's played regularly enough. I mean, especially since moving to Man City for 46 million, he's played 37 and 34 games and has been very much right to the fore of the Man City team. Let's go back and have a look at Manchester United. And they have got a pretty unchanged squad really from what we saw earlier on. Obviously they've got John Joe Shelvey in there, who moved from Leicester for £32 million and has been a pretty poor signing really by all accounts for Manchester United. Ian Fisher is a regen that has been brought in, who's got good determination there but not much else, but it's still early days for him. Dominic Solanke has come in from Chelsea. Obviously he's moved to Liverpool in real life, and he now is a Man United player and has done fairly well, but still early days for him. Callum Wilson is also one of their attacking options with 60 goals in 111 games for them, and obviously he needs no introduction. But Dele Alli is now a Manchester United player. He moved in the 18-19 season for £42.5 million and is now valued at 52 million and has been a real great performer for Manchester United, who unfortunately couldn't win the league this season. Now the first news piece I got was that Jose Mourinho has been relieved of his Manchester United duties because they didn't win the league title. I thought that was a bit poor really on the half of Man United, considering he'd won 2 league titles in a row. Let's have a quick look actually while we're here at the Champions League and see exactly how English teams have performed. Now there hasn't been any English teams in the last 2 for the last 4 years, so I mean that's not very good, is it, considering? Let's have a quick look more recently. So obviously it's going to be Manchester United. How far did they get in the Champions League? So Champions League final is yet to be played. The semi-final, Arsenal were beaten by Atletico de Madrid. So Arsenal managed to get the furthest this season into the Champions League. They got right through to the semi-finals. They've got Alex Smithies and Jack Butland as their goalkeeping options. Butland obviously their number one. Alex Smithies was brought in from QPR. He's played 37 games for them. He moved for 8 million. Played quite a bit in that first season, but hasn't done a fat lot since. They've got Jordan Williams, a decent looking centre-back, brought in from Middlesbrough, initially at Huddersfield, then went to Chelsea for a brief spell, but he's now there. Andre Wisdom, former Liverpool man, Michael Keane, Callum Chambers, Brennan Galloway, Adam Webster, Jack Cork, who has been around a bit, he's played for many clubs in his career, was at Swansea prior to his move to Arsenal, which he moved to Arsenal for 9.5 mil, and it's been a regular fixture with mixed success during those seasons. Kieran Gibbs is still there. Harry Arter has been brought in from Bournemouth, costing nothing at all, and has played regularly, although it hasn't really hit the heights that you'd hope for from Harry Arter, I've got to say. Looking further down the list, Ben Thompson, youngster brought in from Middlesbrough, playing at Bournemouth for a spell before he's moved to Arsenal, and he moved to Arsenal for £20.5 million and has done reasonably well. Phil Foden, subject of some good reports in a few scout reports to date, and his stats have improved quite well actually for getting appearances on the board. He hasn't developed in one of my games at all, given that he hasn't really played, but you give him a few games here, and as we can see, his stats have improved quite nicely, and he'd be quite a decent little player to be have on your side. We've got John, who is a regen, who looks fairly good. We've got Andre Dizel, who was at Ipswich when the game started, valued at 18.5. They picked him up from Ipswich for 12 million. He went via Newcastle, played a couple of seasons there before I moved to Arsenal for £22 million, and looks quite good really, considering. A little English talent there for you guys who may be interested in trying to get an English squad together. They've got Oxlade-Chamberlain, Danny Welbeck and Troy Deeney as their main attacking outlets. Troy Deeney has scored 81 and 143 since moving to Arsenal for £21.5 million. He's been actively on the score sheet in all of the seasons that he's been there, and he's been a good signing for Arsenal, given that bit of experience. Top assist maker for Arsenal was Jack Wilshere. Now you expect nothing less from Wilshere, and he has really thrived being able to play that midfield role for Arsenal, and he's got 35 games. He's been averaging above 7 in his last 2 seasons. He's done really well. So they haven't done anything in Europe. Let's have a look at the Europa League and see if they've managed to do anything in that tournament. So let's have a look at the past winners there. So we've got Inter. Liverpool managed a runner-up spot in the 18-19 season. That's the best of which the English clubs managed. Now let's have a brief look at Liverpool. So they've got Pickford, Alex McCarthy, Carl Jenkinson, Nathaniel Klein, Jake Bidwell, who was at QPR before moving to West Ham and then coming to Liverpool. They've got Rob Holding, the former Arsenal man, centre-back, playing reasonably well for them. Milner is still in there now at the grand old age of 35. They've got some various other players. Johnny Howson, Norwich man, formerly Leeds United before that, and he's played 53 games after moving for 8.5 and hasn't performed really for Liverpool, I've got to say. In above his head, really, considering. Up front, they've got Daniel Sturridge, Danny Ings, and Ryan Brewster, of which hasn't scored a goal yet, but come all the way up from, well, he's already at Liverpool. He's played for, like National League teams, and he scored 16 in 34 for Millwall in League 2 in the penultimate season, but hasn't really hit the ground running for Liverpool as yet. So that is the Premier League we've looked at. Let's have a quick look at the Championship, see who is the most recent winner of the Championship. Brighton have gone up via the playoffs ahead of Crystal Palace. Norwich won the most recent with Wigan in second and Brighton in third. That's decent enough really for what you'd expect for Wigan. Wigan again performing above average, getting back up to the Premier League with a promotion there. So that's it for that, guys. Let's have a quick look at the England under-19s. So here we are then. We're now on the England under-19s. Now, in theory here, we should have a squad full of regens. Now, are there any hidden gems in amongst this lot? We're about to find out. So let's go on appearances. We've got Dylan Kevan with 20 goals in 51 appearances. He plays for Man City. He's currently on loan at Bury. Looks reasonable enough, but still plenty of developing to do. Dean Scott, now that's more like it. The Bristol City man looks to have a good deal of ability there. He's only valued at 375k, contracted to Bristol City, 18 years of age. He looks like he could develop into a decent player. Not too pleased about that finishing stat though. But again, it's early days. Michael Lewis on loan from Chelsea. Currently playing at Newport County. We've got Sean Telford playing for Arsenal on loan at Southend, getting some game time again there. So it's good that these clubs are loaning these players out to get game time elsewhere. And I think we'll leave that there for today, really. So what we've deduced is that once we play these teams with the English players. So one last thing then before we wrap this up today. Now, the idea of this was to get the English players playing in the English League to try and better the English national team, and the aim of that was to try and see if we could develop the England national team via the clubs. And to be honest, given the reputation of the leagues have all dropped slightly, only ever so slightly, the Premier League hasn't really dropped by much, but the Championships has dropped down a few, as have some of the lesser League Two, etc. But has it really helped the national side? I'd say no, given that results here aren't fantastic. I mean, draws with Norway, Denmark, Poland, and Portugal, even Belgium to an extent, aren't brilliant results. A couple of wins over Poland, but they couldn't get any result against Italy. I mean, they're not disastrous results by any stretch of the imagination. I've got to say that. And there are some success stories in the likes of Phil Foden, who has developed nicely for England. Well, not for England, but for Man City. Will Hughes has played really well. Let's have a quick look at the most recent game here. So the most recent game, they had Butland, Klein, Keane, Stones, Shaw, Sterling, Ali, Henderson, Reece Nelson, Marcus Rashford, Harry Kane, Callum Wilson. Let's have a quick look at Reece Nelson. Contracted to Man City, played 72 games, 14 goals, and again, he's developed really well. So that is another success story. Perhaps we're a little too early on in this experiment to really see any difference, but from what I can gather so far, that restricting the English leagues to just English players only just isn't having the effect that I kind of anticipated. And as such, it kind of renders the whole thing pretty void, really. But I've enjoyed this experiment. We've had a look, we tried something a little bit different, and we've tried to see if it would change the structure of the league, see if other teams would win it. And I think in a lot of respects, the fact that Wigan have been back into the Premier League, and they're due to go back in again after this season is completed, which it is, it's shown that teams that otherwise would be lacking, for let's say Burnley, for example, in the Premier League, that with the English player rule, they can do a lot better than they otherwise would. That said, on the other hand, that the bigger teams are actually still winning at the top of the table. So in some respects, it's had quite a wide effect, and in other respects, it hasn't had any effect whatsoever, because they've still got the firepower with the English players, which they can bring in through transfers, etc., etc. Maybe we could go again and look at this in another 5 years' time, 10 years in total. But for today, I'm going to bring this experiment to a close. We've gone 5 years into the future with English players only, no foreign players allowed, and I'm not too sure what we can deduce from it, really. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think of this experiment. Have you learned anything today? Are there any players that you'd like to see and how they've developed? Let me know in the comment section down below. Check out the channel for more content over the next few weeks. Hit the subscribe button if you're new and you haven't already, and I'll catch you again soon.